Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Pearson Education. It's in their Blueprint series of law books. This is Your Plan for Learning series, which is the subtitle, and the one book I'm looking at today is the one on tort law, the law of tort, or torts, depending on how you want to look at it. It's been written by Mariette Jones. Now, this review is similar to some of the other reviews of some of the other Blueprint books that I've looked at from Pearson's. I'm very excited by these books because I've taught all of these subjects that they've actually produced in the Blueprint series over the past 40 years, and I've found it very interesting to see the way in which the subject is now being approached in a rather different way. The law of tort is actually not one of the more difficult areas. There's a great human element to most of the law of torts because of the nature of what a civil wrong is and the relationship between people and property and the way in which people behave or misbehave. So it's actually a very interesting area, and it's got some very amusing cases apart from anything else, and of course it's got the bedrock of the law of negligence in it too, which of course is one of the main areas of my own practice, and for many people in civil practice it's a very big area in its own right. I've given it a title. My wife and I wrote this review and we talked about it, and I've given it the title A Brilliant Modern Approach to the Study of the Law of Tort for 21st Century Lawyers. It's the same sort of title I've given to other titles in the Blueprint series. Let me show you the book. It's a paperback. There it is. That's the front, then the spine, then the back. It doesn't run like the other ones. It's 250 odd pages, something like that. There's inside back cover, a bit of advertising, got a very useful index right at the back. Quite detailed for what it is. Front inside cover, a bit more advertising, and then you've got the front page. The mission statement by Pearson, then again the main Blueprint series. Then you've got 4 parts. The brief contents, which sets out what tort is as an overview, then looking at negligence, straight away we get into negligence, then trespass, statutory regimes, that's occupiers liability, product liability, and defamation, the new Defamation Act, then miscellaneous torts such as Rylands and Fletcher, nuisance, vicarious liability, and so on. Then there are detailed contents there, and then you've seen the miscellaneous part at the back. Then you've got the table of cases, lots and lots of lovely cases, nice lot of statutes as well, so you're not left out. Now, what you want to do with these guides is get an idea of how to use the Blueprint series, because this sets out, do read it carefully so you know what you're looking for, because they do have things setting the scene, cornerstones, application and so forth, key points, core cases and so forth. There's a lot of standard information here. Then what is a blueprint? That sets the scene again for what you've got. Then there's an introduction, and you do have a nice little diagram about how tort law, as it's called here, works. And in fact the author says right at the beginning, often students fresh to the subject tell their tutor that they do not know what the word tort means. But what if you were to be told that all of the following examples are torts? And then there's a list of examples. Tort, of course, being a civil wrong, tort being the French word. But what she does is she actually starts off and gives some sort of idea, even an overview in the introduction of what a tort is, and then she talks about some of the newer torts, and she talks about what I said earlier, and that is about the fact that a tort involves everyday matters. It's everyday lives that are involved in some of these cases. And of course, again, why do we study it? Well, we have to, because it's a compulsory subject, and it's, as I say, it's a very interesting subject. And then, for instance, why is there so much focus on the tort of negligence? Well, actually, the reason for that is because it is the most important, frankly, especially if you're in practice. You've got a lot of diagrams there, you see, but the fact is that you do need to have an understanding of where we've started with the modern law of negligence. Now, if we go into the book itself, here is negligence itself, and there is a little series of diagrams to set the scene. It's the context, legislation, concepts and so forth. Then you've got cases, special characteristics and reforms, because the subject matter is being reformed all the time as we move forward. Because, for instance, the classic example would be occupier's liability. What an occupier's liability would have been centuries ago is very different from what it is today, because it's now statutory based. And of course, again, you've got old cases, some of the older cases which are listed there, and then you've got the newer reforms coming in. And then you've got defamation, always an interesting subject, and defamation, of course, is a difficult subject area, so be aware of that if you answer problem questions. It's not the easiest at all to deal with. Let me just finally talk about economic torts, the cornerstone of the subject matter. Again, a very useful, innovative way of dealing with things. And again, you've got the case, this one is Derry and Peak, again a cornerstone case. Mariette Jones has done a very good job indeed with this subject. I think she brings the subject to life. It's a great subject. I've been very fortunate with the people who taught me tort, both at some of the larger universities, Cambridge and London, and I've been extremely lucky with the lectures and the teaching that I received. But what I would say is that any course of study on tort law can be easy or hard, depending on whether you like the subject and understand how the legal system operates. Because obviously what you do have with tort is both substantial case law and substantial statute law. So you do have to have good knowledge now of both. And teaching the subjects this subject can obviously be a bit of a problem, because again, people sometimes think, oh well, it's not that difficult. Now, a word of warning, it's actually easier than some of the other subjects, but you can come unstuck if you don't know the rules. And I do think with negligence, which forms a very large proportion of most of the syllabuses, and this is a textbook for both professionals and for academic students, I do think it's important to get some idea of exactly where everything fits in, but you will have to put quite a lot of extra time into the subject of negligence itself, because an awful lot of what is in negligence, that's the concept of a duty of care, a breach and damage, a lot of what flows from that is throughout the whole of the law of torts as a sort of structure. So you can see the system being set out before you. The Blueprint series, of course, have the 4 main chapters, and they cover an excellent area, an excellent set of the 4 main parts of the course, which would be relevant to most people doing certainly an undergraduate degree, and as some sort of primer possibly for professional exams. The Pearson mission, of course, is to help people make more of their lives through learning, and the way they achieve this aim is to combine innovative learning technology with trusted content and educational expertise. And the end product is what they describe as providing engaging and effective learning experiences that serve people wherever and whenever they're learning. So the titles are excellent, in particular for what I believe is the distance learners case. I was a distance learner effectively myself, although I did attend some lectures, and I would very much have liked to have had these types of books when I was doing my examinations so many decades ago. The law has, of course, changed quite a bit. The case law is always interesting, and what Pearson have done here is they've provided both digital learning tools and testing programs with their curriculum materials, which I think offers a fresh way of looking at this substantive law area, and I welcome it. I think it's always useful to have these new guides. The Blueprint series themselves, as you can see, are visually designed to assist the acquisition of information, giving answers to the most asked questions, including what is law and how is it applied, and so on, and all the little list that you've got of the various points there on the back of the book. Because obviously the most important problem is the sort of most asked questions. And if you're actually doing this without talking to other people when you're studying, I've found that this book actually does explain things very well indeed, and it can be your friend when when all about you looks as though it's getting awfully confused, through the mist you can sort of go through it, and then you find this this book, which I think is very good. There's a nice bit of overlap as well between some of the subjects. I said earlier, and I think it's fair to say with many substantive law areas, students can view this type of subject, the law of tort or torts, depending on how you look at it, with a bit of apprehension. But I think that goes quite quickly, because the author, Mariette Jones, has produced, I think, a very good book, which is of great assistance to anybody who's learning. We're going through an exciting time of change with study at the moment. So whilst this is only an introductory book, it does fill the gaps that the learner may have in their overall study programme. And I think that the Blueprint series does create this indispensable series of building blocks of the subject to give you, the reader, that bit of how the law actually fits in. If I can just explain that a bit further, showing the book again, there it is. When you look at the contents section, and let's go to the quick section here, the brief contents, you'll see the subject matter that's covered. It kicks off with negligence, as I said earlier, then looks at trespass, statutory regimes and tort. And what Mariette has done is she has tried very hard here to look at the subject matter in terms of what the student will be looking at and the questions they will have. So you do have to start off basically with negligence, and then things do, I think, fall into place once you've done that. As I say, they've got a nice little glossary right at the back, which does help as well, because there are some terms which we've still got some Latin terms like res ipsa loquitur and so forth, but most of the Latin tags are now going, and that probably in some ways is a good idea. Just one point, you do have key points, you have other cases, and you do have lots of reference to further reading. There are main textbooks available as well, but this shouldn't be looked at just on its own. But I think what you've got here is an excellent tort primer, and I'd like to thank Mariette and also the Pearson's group, the people who've been responsible for producing this, because I think it's excellent for the learner. It's a good tool for the tutor as well, because you can actually say, well, these are the areas you want to have a look at. Then you can, of course, teach the subject and tutor it. But remember, at the end of the day, you as the learner are the one that has to do the exam, and you've got to understand the subject. You've got to really try to understand where we are with the concept, for instance, of what is a tort, that's a civil wrong, and for instance, if you're going higher up the academic ladder to master's level and above, you'd then be looking very much more at the interaction between tort and criminal law and all of the other jurisprudential issues associated with it. And if you're looking for a first, even at a bachelor's level, you're going to want to start looking into that. So this starts you off, and then you can go into the rather more detailed articles that are available and all the other things. I'd like to thank everyone concerned, though. It's an excellent starter, and this is great. This is just what we need for the 21st century, tools that we have for teaching and, of course, for studying generally. So thank you. Good luck with your exams. Bye-bye.